Admiral Jake Morrison stood in front of the large window on his ship's bridge. Outside, space looked calm and peaceful. But he knew that was not true. Far away, two alien races were fighting the biggest war the galaxy had ever seen. The war had been going on for 3 whole years now. Captain Lisa Ford walked up to him with a datapad in her hands. Her face looked worried. She had been his second in command for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. "Sir, we just got another message from the Galactic Council," Lisa said. "They want us to join the war. They say the fighting is getting worse every day." Jake took the datapad and read the message. The words were polite, but he could feel the fear behind them. The council was scared. They had good reason to be. The war was between two very different alien races. On one side were the Zephyrians. They looked like tall, thin people made of living crystal. Their skin sparkled in the light and they moved like dancers. They were smart and peaceful most of the time. But in war, they became deadly. Their weapons could cut through anything, and their ships were covered in crystal armor that could stop almost any attack. On the other side were the Void Collective. Nobody knew exactly what they looked like because they lived in dark spacesuits filled with strange gas. Some people said they were made of pure energy. Others thought they might be machines. What everyone knew for sure was that they were masters of dark matter and quantum physics. Their ships could appear and disappear like ghosts. Their weapons could make things simply stop existing. "How many star systems are fighting now?" Jake asked. 17 sectors are active war zones," Lisa replied. "The latest battle was at Kepler Station. Both sides lost over 50 ships each. The station had 2 million people living on it." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. 2 million people, in just one battle. The numbers were getting bigger every week. Commander Ryan Hayes came onto the bridge carrying more reports. Ryan was young, but very good at his job. He had joined the crew 2 years ago, right when the war started. "Admiral, I have the full casualty report from Kepler Station," Ryan said. His voice was quiet and sad. "All 2 million civilians are confirmed dead. The station was completely destroyed. Both alien fleets are now asking for peace talks, but neither side will agree to the other's terms." Jake looked at the report. Pictures showed what was left of Kepler Station. It used to be a beautiful place where people from many different worlds came to trade and live together. Now it was just floating pieces of metal and rock. This was how the war always went. The Zephyrians and the Void Collective would fight huge battles. Millions would die. Then both sides would ask for peace. But they could never agree on anything. After a few days, the fighting would start again, even worse than before. The Zephyrians wanted the Void Collective to stop using dark matter weapons. They said these weapons were destroying the natural order of the universe. The Void Collective wanted the Zephyrians to stop building crystal structures in space. They said these structures were making the universe too organized and stopping natural chaos. Neither side understood what the other really wanted. They just kept fighting and dying. "Sir," Lisa said, "Earth Command is asking for our recommendation. Do we join the war or stay neutral?" Jake had been thinking about this question for months. Humanity was still new to the galaxy. They had only met other alien races 10 years ago. Most aliens thought humans were weak and primitive. Human ships were smaller than alien ships. Human weapons were less powerful. Human technology was hundreds of years behind the advanced races. But Jake knew something the aliens did not know. Humans were different in ways that did not show up on military reports. Humans were good at solving problems that seemed impossible. They were good at working together even when they disagreed. Most importantly, they were good at understanding how other people thought and felt. The aliens had been fighting this war for 3 years and getting nowhere. Maybe it was time for humans to try a different approach. "Tell me about the latest battle reports," Jake said to Ryan. Ryan pulled up a holographic display that showed the recent fighting. Red dots showed Zephyrian ships. Blue dots showed Void Collective ships. The dots moved around each other in complex patterns. "Both sides are using the same tactics they have used for the whole war," Ryan explained. "The Zephyrians form perfect geometric formations and attack in synchronized waves. The Void Collective spreads out randomly and attacks from unexpected angles. Neither side can predict what the other will do, so they just keep fighting the same way over and over. Jake studied the patterns. To most people, it looked like chaos. But Jake could see something else. Both sides were following rules. The Zephyrians always formed triangles, squares, and circles. The Void Collective always moved in curves and spirals. They were as predictable as clockwork, but they could not see it themselves. What about their communication systems? Jake asked. Lisa brought up another display. The Zephyrians use harmonic frequencies. All their ships vibrate in perfect harmony to share information. The Void Collective uses quantum entanglement. Their ships are connected through space and time in ways we don't fully understand. Jake nodded. Both systems were more advanced than anything humans had, but they also had weaknesses. The Zephyrian system needed all ships to be in tune with each other. If that harmony was broken, they could not coordinate. The Void Collective system needed quantum connections to stay stable. If those connections were disrupted, their ships would become isolated. An idea was forming in Jake's mind. It was dangerous and would require perfect timing. But it might be the only way to end this war without billions more deaths. Captain Ford, send a message to Earth Command, Jake said. Tell them we accept the Galactic Council's request. Humanity will join the war. Lisa looked surprised. Sir, are you sure? Our fleet is much smaller than either alien force. If we fight them directly, we will lose quickly. Jake smiled. It was not a happy smile, but it was confident. We are not going to fight them, Captain. We are going to do something much more effective. We are going to make them stop fighting each other. Ryan looked confused. How can we do that, sir? They have been trying to kill each other for 3 years. What can we do that the Galactic Council could not do? The Council has been trying to force them to make peace, Jake explained. That never works when both sides think they are right. Instead, we are going to help them see the truth about themselves and each other. Jake turned back to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien fleets were preparing for their next battle. Millions more would die unless someone found a way to stop them. Send orders to all human ships, Jake commanded. We begin Operation Endgame in 24 hours. And Captain? Yes, sir. Make sure every ship captain understands. We are not going to war to win. We are going to war to make sure nobody has to fight this war ever again. Lisa and Ryan exchanged glances. They did not fully understand the Admiral's plan yet, but they trusted him. Jake Morrison had never lost a battle, and he had never broken a promise. Outside the window, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. In 24 hours, humanity would show the galaxy what humans could do when they stopped playing by everyone else's rules. The 3-year war was about to end. The aliens just did not know it yet. General Paul Carter sat deep underground in his command center beneath the mountains of Colorado. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, ship positions, and communication feeds from across the galaxy. He had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. The message from Admiral Morrison had just arrived. 4 simple words. Begin Operation Endgame now. Paul had been planning for this day since the Galactic War started. While other military leaders thought about weapons and battle tactics, Paul thought about something different. He thought about minds and hearts and fears. Lieutenant Colonel Brooks, activate Phase 1, Paul said into his headset. Lieutenant, Colonel Amy Brooks was sitting at a console covered with buttons and switches. She had been studying alien behavior patterns for the past 3 years. Amy knew more about how aliens thought than most aliens knew about themselves. Phase 1 is go, sir, Amy replied. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls. All sleeper. Agents are receiving their activation codes now. For 2 years, human agents had been living and working on alien worlds. They were not spies in the usual sense. They did not steal secrets or blow up buildings. Instead, they learned how aliens lived, how they thought, and what made them afraid. The Zephyrians were crystal beings who needed perfect harmony to function. Their entire civilization was based on everyone working together in perfect balance. When that balance was broken, They became confused and scared. The Void Collective were chaos beings who fed on disorder and unpredictability. They saw patterns and organization as threats to their way of life. When things became too organized, they felt like they were dying. Both races had weaknesses that they did not even know about. On the Zephyrian homeworld of Crystalla Prime, Agent Lucy Parker received her activation signal. Lucy had been working as a communications technician for 2 years. The Zephyrians trusted her because she was quiet and did her job well. They had no idea she was human. Lucy walked to the main communication array that connected all Zephyrian military ships. The array was a beautiful crystal structure that hummed with perfect musical tones. Each crystal was tuned to match the others exactly. Lucy pulled out a small device that looked like a Zephyrian tool, but it was actually a human invention. When she attached it to the communication array, it began sending out frequencies that were almost right but not quite. The effect was immediate. Across Zephyrian space, military commanders began receiving messages that sounded correct but felt wrong. The harmonic frequencies that held their fleets together started to drift out of tune. Commander Zixtal, leading the Zephyrian Third Fleet, suddenly found that his ships could not stay in formation. "What is happening to our harmony?" he asked. His crew. But nobody could answer. The crystal networks that connected their minds were becoming fuzzy and unclear. On the other side of the galaxy, Agent Mike Rodriguez was doing something similar but different. Mike had been living on a Void Collective station called Entropy 7. The Void Collective had accepted him because he seemed to enjoy chaos and disorder. Mike walked through the dark corridors of the station until he reached the quantum communication center. Unlike the beautiful crystals of the Zephyrians, this place looked like controlled chaos. Wires and tubes twisted in random patterns. Energy flowed in directions that made no sense. Mike connected his own device to the quantum network. His device created tiny amounts of order in the chaos. It was so small that the Void Collective sensors could not detect it. But it was enough to disrupt their quantum connections. Overlord Voidmoth, commanding the Collective's dark fleet, suddenly felt his connection to his ships becoming weaker. The quantum threads that linked his consciousness to his captains were becoming organized and predictable. To a chaos being, this felt like being slowly suffocated. "The quantum streams are becoming too stable," Voidmoth reported to his commanders. "We are losing our connection to the infinite disorder." All across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human agents who had spent years learning alien weaknesses were now exploiting them. They were not attacking with weapons or violence. They were attacking with understanding. Captain Greg Sullivan commanded the stealth ship TFS Shadow. His ship was invisible to alien sensors because it used technology that neither the Zephyrians nor the Void Collective understood. While they focused on harmony or chaos, humans had learned to be both organized and flexible at the same time. "Phase 1 is complete, General Carter," Greg reported over the secure channel. "Both alien fleets are experiencing major communication problems. Zephyrian formations are breaking apart. Void Collective coordination is failing." Paul Carter watched the results on his screens. Red dots representing Zephyrian ships were moving out of their perfect formations. Blue dots representing Void Collective ships were losing their chaotic patterns and clustering together randomly. "Excellent," Paul said. "Amy, begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was more complex than Phase 1. Amy activated a network of human ships that had been hiding throughout the war zone. These ships were small and looked harmless. The aliens had ignored them for months, thinking they were just human cargo vessels or research ships. But these ships carried something more dangerous than any weapon. They carried truth. Captain Helen Davis commanded one of these hidden ships. She was a psychologist who specialized in alien behavior. Her ship, the TFS Insight, was positioned near the main Zephyrian battle fleet. Activating psychological warfare package, Helen announced to her crew. Her ship began broadcasting carefully designed signals toward the Zephyrian fleet. The signals were not random. They were created based on 3 years of studying how Zephyrians thought and felt. The broadcasts showed the Zephyrians images of their own battles, but the images were changed in subtle ways. The Zephyrians saw footage of their crystal ships firing on Void Collective vessels. But in the human-modified footage, the crystal weapons appeared to be destroying Zephyrian colony worlds by accident. The images showed crystal gardens burning and harmony temples collapsing under Zephyrian fire. To the Zephyrians, these images were horrifying. Their entire culture was based on protecting harmony and beauty. The idea that their own weapons might be destroying what they loved most was almost impossible to accept. "This cannot be real," whispered Commander Zixtal as he watched the footage. "We would never harm our own crystal gardens." But the images looked completely real. The human technology was so advanced that even Zephyrian experts could not tell the footage was fake. On the other side of the battle zone, Captain Bobby Martinez was doing something similar with the Void Collective. His ship, the TFS Deception, was broadcasting different images to the Chaos beings. The Void Collective saw footage of their own dark matter weapons attacking Zephyrian crystal ships. But in the human version, the dark matter was accidentally consuming Void Collective entropy temples. The images showed pure chaos being organized and structured by their own weapons. To Chaos beings, this was like watching their gods die. The Void Collective valued entropy and disorder above everything else. Seeing their own weapons create order instead of chaos was their worst nightmare. "The quantum streams are betraying us," moaned Overlord Voidmoth. "Our own power is destroying the beautiful chaos we sworn to protect." Both alien fleets began to panic. Zephyrian commanders started questioning their orders. How could they continue fighting if their weapons were destroying their own people? Void Collective leaders began experiencing existential crisis. How could they use weapons that created order instead of chaos? Lieutenant Colonel Amy Brooks monitored the alien communications from her underground command center. "Sir, we are seeing massive confusion in both fleets. Zephyrian ships are requesting permission to return home to check on their crystal gardens. Void Collective vessels are demanding investigations into their entropy temples." General Paul Carter smiled. Phase 2 was working even better than expected. Both alien fleets were becoming more concerned about protecting their own cultures than attacking their enemies. "How long before they start turning their weapons on their own command structures?" Paul asked. "Based on their psychological profiles, I estimate 15 minutes for the Zephyrians and 12 minutes for the Void Collective," Amy replied. Paul nodded. Everything was going according to plan. The 3-year war was about to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. And the best part was that neither alien race would ever know that humans were responsible. They would think they had figured out the truth about the war on their own. Sometimes the most effective victory was the one where the enemy defeated themselves. Dr. Helen Murphy sat in her laboratory on Earth, watching the chaos unfold through her monitors. She was the galaxy's leading expert on alien psychology, though most aliens did not know humans had such experts. For 3 years, she had been studying every detail of how the Zephyrians and Void Collective thought and acted. "General Carter, we are ready for Phase 3, Helen said into her communication device. "Both alien fleets are now questioning their own actions. It is time to show them the real truth." Helen had discovered something that no alien military leader had ever realized. The Zephyrians and Void Collective were not really different species. They were opposite sides of the same coin. Both races needed what the other race had, but they were too proud and too scared to admit it. The Zephyrians created perfect order and harmony, but too much order made them weak and predictable. They secretly longed for a little bit of chaos to make their lives more interesting. The Void Collective created pure chaos and entropy, but too much chaos made them lost and confused. They secretly wanted some order to give their lives meaning and direction. Neither race understood this about themselves. They only saw the other race as their opposite and their enemy. Major Steve Collins received his orders aboard the human ship TFS Deception. Steve was an expert in holographic technology. His job was to create images so real that even aliens with advanced sensors would believe them. "Beginning Phase 3 projection," Steve announced to his crew. Activating the truth protocols. Steve's ship and dozens of other human vessels began projecting massive holographic displays throughout the battle zone. But these were not the fake images from Phase 2. These were real recordings of the war, but shown from a completely different perspective. The Zephyrians saw footage of their own crystal cities, but instead of showing the perfect harmony they were used to, the recordings showed Zephyrian children playing games that had no rules. They showed Zephyrian artists creating sculptures that were deliberately imperfect. They showed Zephyrian musicians playing songs that broke all the traditional harmonic patterns. The recordings were real. Human observers had been filming Zephyrian society for years. They had discovered that young Zephyrians naturally enjoyed a little bit of chaos and disorder, but Zephyrian society forced them to suppress these feelings as they grew older. "This cannot be," whispered Commander Zixtal, as he watched his own people enjoying activities that went against everything their culture taught them. "How can our children find joy in disorder?" At the same time, the Void Collective was seeing similar recordings of their own society. The projections showed Void Collective beings quietly organizing their personal spaces when they thought nobody was watching. They showed Chaos beings creating beautiful patterns in their art. They showed Entropy worshippers secretly arranging their belongings in neat, organized ways. These recordings were also real. Human observers had discovered that Void Collective beings naturally craved some order and structure in their lives, but their society forced them to hide these desires and pretend they only loved chaos. "Impossible," groaned Overlord Voidmoth as he watched his own people finding comfort in organization and patterns. "How can our brothers find peace in such terrible order?" But the most shocking recordings were yet to come. Steve Collins activated the final set of projections. These showed something that neither alien race had ever seen before. The projections showed the very first contact between Zephyrians and the Void Collective over 3,000 years ago. Human archaeologists had found these recordings in ancient ruins on dead worlds. The footage showed the first meeting between the two races. In the ancient recordings, the first Zephyrians and Void Collective beings were not fighting. They were working together. The crystal beings were creating beautiful structures, while the chaos beings were adding random elements that made the structures even more beautiful. The order and chaos were combining to create something neither race could make alone. The recordings showed cities that were both perfectly organized and wildly creative. They showed art that was both harmonic and discordant at the same time. They showed the two races living together in perfect balance. "By the eternal crystals," breathed Commander Zixtal. "We were once allies. We worked together to create beauty, beyond imagination. By the infinite void," whispered Overlord Voidmoth. "We were once partners. We combined our chaos with their order to make something greater than either of us alone." Colonel Beth Adams was monitoring all alien communications from her station on Earth. She watched as both alien fleets began broadcasting messages to each other for the first time in 3 years. But these were not threats or demands for surrender. These were questions. "General Carter, both fleets are asking each other about the ancient recordings," Beth reported. "They want to know if the footage is real. They are beginning to remember their shared history." Paul Carter nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. "Continue monitoring their communications. Let them talk to each other. Do not interfere." For the first time in 3 years, Zephyrian and Void Collective commanders were having actual conversations instead of just fighting. The communications were awkward at first. Both races had forgotten how to talk to each other without anger and hatred. "Void Collective Vessel, this is Zephyrian Commander Zixtal," came the transmission. "Can you confirm the authenticity of the ancient recordings? Did our peoples once work together?" There was a long pause before Overlord Voidmoth replied. "Zephyrian, Commander, our oldest archives speak of a time before the Great Separation, but we had forgotten. The recordings appear to match our most ancient memories." As the two commanders talked, other ships from both fleets began joining the conversation. Captains who had been trying to kill each other hours earlier were now sharing stories and memories. They were remembering things their grandparents had told them about the old days, before the war, before the hatred. Major Tony Martinez was watching the battle zone from his ship, the TFS Observer. He could see both alien fleets changing their formations. Instead of preparing for battle, they were moving into neutral positions. Ships that had been aiming weapons at each other were now turning their weapons away. "General Carter, both fleets have stopped all aggressive maneuvers," Tony reported. "They are maintaining safe distances from each other. but they are not retreating. They appear to be waiting. Waiting for what? Paul asked. I think they are waiting for permission to approach each other peacefully, Tony replied. They want to meet, but they are afraid to make the first move. Dr. Helen Murphy had been analyzing the alien psychology data throughout the operation. She understood what was happening better than anyone. General, both races are experiencing what humans call cognitive dissonance, Helen explained. They have spent 3 years believing they were enemies. Now they are learning they were once friends. Their minds are struggling to accept this new reality. They need help to take the next step, Helen continued. They need someone to show them that it is safe to trust each other again, someone they both respect but who is not part of their ancient conflict. Paul Carter understood immediately. They need a neutral mediator, someone who can help them remember how to be friends instead of enemies. Exactly, Helen said. And there is only one race in the galaxy that both sides trust enough to fill that role. Paul smiled. It was time for the final phase of Operation Endgame. All ships, this is General Carter. Prepare for Phase 4. We are going to help 2 old friends remember how to shake hands instead of throwing punches. In the battle zone, both alien fleets were still talking to each other cautiously. They wanted to meet in person, but 3 years of war had made them afraid to trust. They needed someone to show them that peace was possible. They needed humanity to teach them how to make peace instead of war. The 3-year Galactic War was about to end, not with a final battle, but with a reunion between old friends who had forgotten they were family. Admiral Jake Morrison watched as both alien fleets floated in space like 2 groups of children who wanted to play together, but were too shy to ask. The Zephyrian crystal ships sparkled in the starlight, their perfect formations now relaxed and peaceful. The Void Collective dark vessels drifted nearby, their chaotic movements now gentle instead of threatening. Captain Ford, signal both fleets, Jake ordered. Tell them the human fleet is approaching as neutral mediators. We are here to help them remember how to be friends. Lisa Ford sent the message and received replies almost immediately. Both alien commanders were asking for human help. They wanted to meet each other, but they did not know how to do it safely after 3 years of war. Sir, both fleets are requesting that we provide a neutral meeting place, Lisa reported. They trust us to keep them safe while they talk. Jake smiled. This was exactly what he had hoped would happen. Tell them we will meet at the coordinates I am sending. And Captain, prepare the TFS Vengeance for the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history. While the alien fleets prepared to move to the meeting point, something else was happening that would change everything forever. Commander Tony Martinez was overseeing the deployment of humanity's most secret weapon. Release the nanite clouds, Jake commanded. Tony activated controls that opened small ports all along the hull of every human ship. Billions of tiny machines, each smaller than a grain of sand, began floating out into space. To alien sensors, they looked like harmless space dust. But these nanites were not weapons. They were something much more powerful. They were designed to repair and improve any technology they touched, but they only worked according to human design principles. The nanites drifted toward both alien fleets like invisible snow. When they touched Zephyrian crystal technology, they began making small changes. The crystals started growing in new patterns that were still beautiful, but now followed human ideas about what looked good. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as their ship hulls began developing new crystal formations. The changes were not ugly or harmful. In fact, they were more beautiful than anything the Zephyrians had ever created. But they were beautiful in a human way, not a Zephyrian way. What is happening to our ships? Asked Commander Zixtal. The crystals are growing in patterns we have never seen before. At the same time, the nanites were touching Void Collective technology. But here they did the opposite. The chaotic dark matter conduits began organizing themselves into neat, efficient patterns. The random energy flows became structured and predictable. The Void Collective watched as their ships became more organized than they had ever been. The changes made their technology work better than ever before. But the order and structure felt completely alien to beings who loved chaos. Our entropy systems are becoming too organized, reported Overlord Voidmoth. The beautiful chaos is being replaced by terrible efficiency. Both alien races were experiencing something they had never felt before. Their technology was being changed to match human preferences. But the strange thing was that neither race could bring themselves to stop the changes. The Zephyrian modifications were too beautiful to destroy. The Void Collective improvements were too useful to remove. Captain Julie Parker, commanding the human ship TFS Architect, monitored the nanite integration process. Admiral Morrison, both alien fleets are now operating on hybrid human-alien systems. They cannot shut down the nanites without destroying their own ships, but the psychological effects are exactly as predicted. The psychological effects were the real purpose of the nanites. The Zephyrians were learning that beauty could exist in forms they had never imagined. The Void Collective was discovering that organization could be more powerful than chaos. Both races were being forced to see the universe through human eyes, and through human eyes they could finally see each other clearly. "Sir, we are receiving a joint transmission from both fleet commanders," Lisa Ford announced. "They are asking to meet with you personally." Jake knew this moment would come. The aliens needed to talk to someone who could help them understand what was happening to them and to their ancient relationship with each other. "Set course for the neutral zone," Jake ordered. "It is time to help two old friends remember how to shake hands." The meeting took place in space between the two fleets. The human ship TFS Vengeance positioned itself exactly halfway between the Zephyrian and Void Collective formations. Both alien commanders came aboard the human vessel with small groups of advisors. Jake met them in the ship's main conference room. He had been preparing for this conversation for months. Everything depended on what happened in the next hour. Commander Zixtal entered first. He was tall and thin, made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light. His movements were graceful and precise, like a dancer performing a perfect routine. Overlord Voidmoth came in next. He wore a dark suit filled with swirling energy that hurt to look at directly. His form seemed to shift and change constantly, like smoke given shape and consciousness. Both aliens sat down at opposite ends of the conference table. They looked at each other with expressions that mixed curiosity, fear, and something that might have been hope. "Welcome aboard the TFS Vengeance," Jake said calmly. "I know this is difficult for both of you. 3 years ago, you were trying to kill each other. Today, you are sitting at the same table. That takes courage." "Admiral Morrison," Commander Zixtal spoke in a voice like wind chimes. "Our ships are changing in ways we do not understand. Our crystal technology is growing in patterns that follow human aesthetics rather than Zephyrian harmony principles." "Admiral," Overlord Voidmoth's voice sounded like whispers in the dark. "Our chaos systems are becoming organized according to human efficiency standards. We can feel our natural entropy being structured by your nanite technology." Jake nodded. "I know this is confusing and probably frightening. Your technology is being changed because we needed you to see yourselves and each other through neutral eyes. For 3 years you have been looking at this war through the lens of your own cultures. Now you are seeing it through human eyes." "What do you see when you look at us through human eyes?" Zixtal asked. Jake looked at both aliens carefully before answering. "I see 2 races who complete each other. Commander Zixtal, your people create perfect order and harmony, but order without any chaos becomes stagnant and lifeless. Overlord Voidmoth, your people create pure chaos and change, but chaos without any order becomes meaningless and destructive." Both aliens were listening intently. "When humans look at your war, we do not see enemies fighting," Jake continued. "We see partners who have forgotten how to dance together. The Zephyrians are trying to create a universe of perfect harmony. The Void Collective is trying to maintain a universe of natural chaos. Both goals are necessary for a healthy galaxy." "But how can order and chaos work together?" Voidmoth asked. "They are opposites. They cancel each other out." "Do they?" Jake asked. He activated a holographic display that showed images of Earth. "Look at my planet. We have both order and chaos working together every day. Our cities are carefully planned and organized, but nature grows wild and free around them. Our Music follows harmonic rules but also includes improvisation and surprise. Our art has both structure and creativity. The aliens studied the images of Earth with fascination. They had never seen a world where order and chaos existed in balance. Your ancient archives show that your peoples once worked together this way, Jake said, activating another display that showed the archaeological recordings from Part 3. You built cities that were both perfectly organized and wildly creative. You created art that was both harmonic and chaotic. You were stronger together than either race could be alone. Commander Zixtal and Overlord Voidmoth looked at each other across the table. For the first time in 3 years, they were not seeing an enemy. They were seeing a potential partner. The war started because you forgot that you need each other, Jake said softly. It can end when you remember that you are stronger together than apart. The room fell silent as both aliens considered Jake's words. Outside the conference room, windows, their fleets waited for a decision that would determine the future of the galaxy. The silence in the conference room stretched for what felt like hours but was actually only a few minutes. Commander Zixtal and Overlord Voidmoth stared at each other across the table, 3 years of hatred slowly melting away as ancient memories began to surface. Finally, Zixtal spoke in his musical voice. Voidmoth, do you remember the crystal gardens of Harmony Prime? Our peoples built them together 3,000 years ago. Voidmoth's dark form shifted as old emotions stirred within him. I remember, Crystal Brother. My ancestors provided the chaotic growth patterns while yours provided the harmonic structure. Together we created gardens more beautiful than either race could make alone. Then why did we forget? Zixtal asked, his crystal body dimming with sadness. Why did we become enemies instead of remaining friends? Admiral Jake Morrison had been studying this question for months. Fear, he said simply. Both of your races grew afraid of losing your identity. The Zephyrians became scared that chaos would destroy their harmony. The Void Collective became scared that order would eliminate their freedom. So you stopped working together and started fighting each other, Jake continued. Instead of solving your differences, you decided the other race was the problem. You forgot that your differences were actually your greatest strength. Voidmoth nodded slowly. We let fear make us stupid. We saw threat where we should have seen opportunity. But how do we fix 3,000 years of separation and 3 years of war? Zixtal asked. How do we convince our people that former enemies can become friends again? Jake smiled. The same way humans always solve impossible problems, one step at a time. He activated the ship's communication system. This is Admiral Morrison to all ships, human and alien. Please prepare to witness the end of the Galactic War. Jake turned to both alien commanders. Are you ready to show the galaxy that peace is possible? Both aliens nodded. They stood up from their chairs and walked toward each other. For a moment, they hesitated. 3 years of fighting were hard to forget, but then Zixtal extended his crystal hand, and Voidmoth reached out with his energy form. When they touched, something amazing happened. The crystal and the dark energy began to create new patterns together. Beautiful structures of light and shadow danced around their joined hands. It was the first time in 3,000 years that Zephyrian harmony and Void Collective chaos had worked together. Broadcast this to all ships, Jake ordered Captain Ford. Let everyone see that cooperation is more powerful than conflict. The image of the 2 alien commanders shaking hands was transmitted to every ship in both fleets. The effect was immediate and dramatic. On Zephyrian ships, crystal beings who had spent 3 years preparing for battle began to remember why they had once loved their chaotic partners. The random patterns created by void energy made their perfect crystal structures more interesting and beautiful. On Void Collective vessels, chaos beings who had forgotten the value of organization began to see how harmonic structures could make their entropy more meaningful and powerful. Sir, both fleets are sending messages, Lisa Ford reported excitedly. They want to begin immediate cooperation protocols. They are asking permission to start working together right now. But Jake knew that ending a war required more than just good intentions. There were practical problems that needed to be solved. Commander Zixtal, Overlord Voidmoth, Jake said. Your people are eager to cooperate, but they need guidance. You must show them how to work together without losing their individual identities. What do you suggest, Admiral? Zixtal asked. Jake had been thinking about this moment for months. Start small. Begin with joint projects that benefit both races. Show your people that cooperation makes everyone stronger, not weaker. He activated another display showing star maps. There are 17 star systems that have been damaged by the war. Both of your races have the technology to repair them, but it would take decades for either race to do it alone. Working together, you could repair all 17 systems in less than a year, Jake continued. Zephyrian crystal technology could provide the structural framework. Void collective entropy manipulation could accelerate the natural healing processes. Void Moth's dark form brightened with excitement. Our chaos engines could restart the natural evolution of damaged ecosystems, while Zephyrian harmony networks maintain stable planetary environments. Yes, Zixtal agreed, his crystals ringing with musical tones. Our peoples working together could heal the galaxy faster and better than either race working alone. Over the next hour, the three commanders planned the first joint Zephyrian Void Collective project in 3,000 years. They would begin with the Kepler Station system, where 2 million people had died just days earlier. Together, they would bring life back to that dead system. There is one more thing, Jake said as the meeting was ending. Both of your races need to understand that this cooperation is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. The strongest beings in the universe are those who know when to compete and when to cooperate. Ambassador Karen Lee arrived on the TFS Vengeance just as the formal peace negotiations were beginning. Karen was humanity's best diplomat, and she had been preparing for this moment since the war started. Gentlemen, Karen said as she entered the conference room, I have here the first peace treaty between your races in 3,000 years. It is also the shortest war-ending document in galactic history. The treaty was indeed short. It contained only 3 main points. First, both races acknowledged that they were stronger working together than fighting apart. Second, they agreed to begin immediate cooperation on repairing war damage. Third, they established humanity as the official mediator for any future disagreements. Why do you want humans to be mediators? Voidmoth asked. Your race is much younger and less advanced than ours. Karen smiled. Because humans have something both of your races lost 3,000 years ago. We remember how to see the galaxy through someone else's eyes. We can understand both order and chaos without being afraid of either one. The signing ceremony took place in space with ships from all 3 races arranged in a perfect circle. Human vessels positioned themselves between the Zephyrian and Void collective fleets, symbolizing their role as mediators and peacemakers. As the commanders signed the treaty, something unexpected happened. The nanites that had been changing alien technology throughout the day suddenly activated in a new way. All 3 fleets began working together as a single unified force. Zephyrian crystal networks connected with human computer systems. Void collective quantum channels linked with both human and Zephyrian communications. For the first time in galactic history, 3 completely different technologies were working in perfect harmony. Admiral Morrison, Commander Zixtal said in amazement, Our combined fleets are more powerful than the sum of their parts. Human adaptability has created a bridge between our order and their chaos. This is impossible, Voidmoth whispered. 3 different technologies should not be able to work together this well. How did humans make this happen? Jake looked out at the combined fleet with pride. We did what humans always do when faced with an impossible situation. We found a way to make it possible. General Paul Carter received the final report in his underground command center on Earth. Total human casualties, 0. Total shots fired by human weapons, 0. Duration of human involvement in the 3-year galactic war, 4 hours and 57 minutes. The galaxy had learned something important that day. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is not the one that destroys, but the one that heals. Sometimes, the greatest victory comes not from defeating your enemies, but from helping them remember they were never really enemies at all. As the combined fleets began their journey to repair the damaged Kepler system, Jake Morrison reflected on what humanity had accomplished. They had not just ended a war, They had reunited a family that had been separated for 3,000 years. In the end, the galaxy discovered that when humanity joins a war, they do not fight to win. They fight to make sure no one ever has to fight that war again. And sometimes, the best way to end a fight is to remind everyone why they should be friends instead.